travel across the road, so to speak. We're going to go to Connecticut now. I'm going to talk to Rich Burgess, who is the president of Connecticut Carry. And we're going to find out what's happening over there in Connecticut. Hey, Rich, thanks for joining me this evening.
Hey, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Well, why don't you catch us up in what's going on in Connecticut? You know, there are so many stories out there, and, we're never quite sure what's the truth and what's not the truth. And, have people had their doors busted down? Are the police knocking at their door? Are cops going out shooting people? What's really going on in Connecticut?
Well, that's really the issue. We've issued a press release, and we've done some pretty serious media campaigning here to try to let people know across the nation that most of the reports out there are not factually based, I'll say. We have a lot of reports of, they're going door to door, they're confiscating, they're doing all this stuff. Well, no, they're not. And we've had confiscation in Connecticut for over a decade now on a pretty regular basis. But this is not what's going on as told by the media. We're trying to get that out there that January 1st was a deadline for the applications for certificates of weapons possession and all that. The best data that we've got off the Connecticut State Police is that they've only processed 11,000 out of the 50,000 plus that they have. So, even if they were going to plan on confiscation, it certainly wouldn't be right now. So I'm not sure where any of the media sources that are reporting that are getting it from. But, there are obviously some very major issues here. I mean, obviously anytime the government makes a play like this where they do full-scale registration and, make so many people into felons, whether those people are doing civil disobedience or whether they're just ignorant of the law, this is a huge problem. So we would really like the nation to help us concentrate on what the real issues are instead of trying to gin up fear and uncertainty and doubt here.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't blame you for doing that. It's always better if everybody understands the truth instead of they go off half-cocked in a different direction, That doesn't resolve anything. It really makes it a lot worse. I looked at your press release and you were talking... I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to point out, that was one of our main founding principles is truth and transparency. So, above all else, we're not going to be the organization we're trying to lie to people or try to gin up fear. What you'll get from us every single time is the exact truth as we know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm reading through your press release, and I read a line in there that made so much sense to me. And it's also a line I've used here in New York State, and that line was no way that the state is going to know who's complying, who's not complying, because how are they going to know who has and who doesn't have, and to what degree they have? Because I wondered, I hear, and everybody says, well, if you bought it through an FFL, or you buy ammo, or blah, 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 but that's not going to be an easy task for anybody to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And the state had extremely faulty data before, which really we believe is the true point of this law. The point of this law is not to, stop another Newtown massacre. It's not to, make anybody safer. What it is it's just another step for the government to have a better registry on the people. And a better registry means better, control and eventually possibly confiscation. So we really believe that's the focus, and this is just iteration. This law is not perfect for them by any means, and we expect to see it rehashed in the next few legislative sessions. But the real point here is that we're not at the deadline here. We're not at the rock bottom in Connecticut.
Okay, what do you mean by the rock bottom?
Well, rock bottom would be
where...
right?
Oh, okay, right,
rock
okay.
bottom would be where all firearms are banned, where everything's going awry. Nobody's being dragged out of their houses in Connecticut yet. And, we don't foresee that happening anytime soon because even the data that people think that the state has, we went out there and proven on our website. We actually host the exact copy of the Connecticut State Weapons Registry. And, of course, we have no names or addresses in there to try to shield people's identities. But you can still, you can search for a particular serial number in there, and you'll find it in 6 or 7 different towns. It'll basically show all the places that pistol or rifle has been. So, like we keep trying to tell people, look, the state doesn't have good information. Don't give them any better information. Let them keep working on this registry while we try to fight it behind the scenes. And we really believe that the right way to fight that is by going after the particular enforcement on on the ground level, the street level.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, your press release says that they, should enforce the laws as written, and then fight it out in court, or completely repeal the 2013 gun ban. So, it sounds like your legislation is as convoluted as ours is in New York State.
Right, and the big thing here is that we want to get across the message that, that if you read carefully, which I'm sure you have in the press release, the whole point of this press release is to basically declare an ultimatum to the state, which we know that they won't take. We know the state's not going to enforce it, and we know the state's not going to repeal it. And that's the point, is that the state is impotent. There is no way for them to do anything here, and we want to show everybody that, on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the issue, that whether you are against this law, it's impotent, so let's just keep moving on and getting bigger and stronger. But if you're for the law, why are you for the law? It's impotent. There's no way it can possibly affect public safety, even if for some reason you thought it ever could, because it will never be enforced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Those are great points. I mean, when I read through your release, I thought, these are very good points, and pretty much, what we should be saying here in New York, because we haven't said it yet. First of all, because they can't enforce it, and, they don't even know how to enforce it. I mean, our state police have even said that, they're so confused. They don't know. There's components they're not quite sure. They can't answer whether, the one in the chamber counts or not. And when we already had 600 different laws on the books already considered gun control, they threw this additional one, on us, and it's crazy. And I wonder, as a gun owner, what are we supposed to do? And so I wonder in Connecticut, when you're getting such mixed messages from people, what is your average gun owner supposed to think? And what's the best route for them to take at this point?
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I think you really kind of hit the nail on the head there. And it rings really true for Connecticut. Obviously, I'm not 100% up on, some of the goings on in New York. However, in Connecticut, we've long expressed the fact that the state police and the local police really do not know the laws here. They don't know them at all. And it's really shocking. And when we release stuff like that, people kind of think that we're trying to attack the police or this and that. But really it comes from a place of, we really don't believe that people should be enforcing laws that they don't fully understand. And so for us, we really want to highlight that. We do try to educate the police. We try to educate the citizens. Obviously, we're not trying to educate the police to hurt more people, but, sometimes you have to educate them in how to enforce the law if you want them to enforce it correctly. And so really a huge emphasis for us is education. And, if they don't know the laws now, there may be a change in tactic in that regard because we don't really want them to know the laws now. These laws are so egregious and are going to hurt so many people that, they're kind of on their own. However, we truly want to educate the citizens on how to get around the laws because these laws, there's no moral basis for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the point that I try to make to people that are attacking the police, I try to explain to them, the police don't make the laws, and their job is just to enforce them. They don't have any part, usually, in the development of these nonsense things that they pass. Then these laws are thrown at them, and it's up to them just to enforce it. And quite often, as you say, they don't have a clue because they don't understand it either, because some of these laws say one thing to do something else, and they just keep counteracting and stuff. It is crazy. So, talk to me about this issue where you guys were supposed to register by the 1st of January, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So, what did your registration entail? Was it everything? Was it specific guns? What was your registration point?
The registration was for certain weapons that are classified as what the state calls assault weapons. These were a continuation. They classified 100 new named weapons as assault weapons, and then they also added a new feature list. Connecticut's always had a two-system, a bicameral, if you will, assault weapon ban. So you have a named list, which is just a list of all the different models they could figure out that look scary to them. And then they have a feature list, which is things like pistol grips and detachable magazines, flash suppressors, things like that.
Right.
And so out of that list, those were the assault weapons, as they call them. But then they had a thing called large capacity magazines. And basically that's any magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. So
Mm-hmm.
either way, they all had to be registered by the 1st, January 1st, 2014, or you have to give them up, essentially.
Give them up. Okay, so that's what the issue was. Some people were saying that they did their registration, but it got there late, and
Right.
so now there was supposedly a letter. Is there really a letter, Rich? I mean, is that true? There's a letter out there that tells them.
Right, the letter does exist. We have confirmed that
Okay.
with the state police. Our director at Peruta actually went out and went down to DSPP and got right in their face and asked the right questions. The letter went out as well, but it only went out to a few people, according to them, and it was later retracted before all the commotion started up, apparently. But what the real thing is that the letter, and I tried to express this to many media sources, but apparently they all decided to run with confiscation letter instead, which really was inappropriate in my opinion. This letter was actually a good thing in my opinion. The state police, for the first time that I've ever seen, really did something right in the idea of firearms laws. While it looked draconian to a lot of people, what that letter was saying, and in pretty clear language, was that you could, basically your application has been rejected, and there are several reasons why the application could be rejected, including like USF. But also some people are disqualified from having those according to the law, such as people who have criminal record and things like that. So they actually do run a background check and all that stuff. It's their last chance to check it, basically. So if those applications were denied, the people now had, I believe it was 4 options, and I probably won't get them all right, but it was, you can turn them into an in-state FFL, you could transfer them out of state, you could turn them into the police department, or you could make them inoperable. And I guess we did get all 4 right. But all 4 of the options, I mean, yeah, the last one on my list would ever be turn it into a police department. But the other ones are not confiscation. You can either make them inoperable or you can get rid of them for a price. And FFLs all around the state are willing to take them in, and FFLs all around the state are also willing to, add features or subtract features or whatever you want to try to make them compliant. So, we try to advise people that all this is saying is exactly what the law says. So the state police are basically just giving legal advice, which isn't even really all that difficult for them. They just copied it right out of statute. And they're actually giving that to you, even though you have declared yourself a felon and written a sworn confession. Because you have to remember these applications that people sent in included a sworn affidavit from a notary public and had a thumbprint on them. So you sent in a sworn affidavit that you're a felon. And instead of arresting you, which they really were within their rights to do, although obviously we fight anybody who tried, you really did confess to a crime, and the state police gave you a free pass. So we're trying to tell people, let's not make this into something it's not, and yet they still went live with the story that it was a confiscation letter.
Oh, gotcha. Well, that's interesting that it's a sworn affidavit and also has a thumbprint on it, as your registration form.
Yeah.
We in
the
a few
thumbprint
were going
is nonsense, basically.
Yeah. So, to do the thumbprint, did you have to go to someplace and have your fingerprints done? What's with the thumbprint?
No, that was a lot of speculation that people had, and, the state police weren't very good at answering it, but as we indicated to people, it wasn't a rolled thumbprint. It wasn't anything that was going to be used for identification. It was, simply basically it was their way of making it more difficult for people, I think. But you can go down the table, buy an ink pad, and put something down there. And I know plenty of people who did. I advised people. I assisted people. And they haven't had any problems, and they shouldn't. This wasn't a fingerprint card like you would when you were, going for a criminal background check.
Right. Well, that's what I wondered. It struck me odd, It's like, with this print, I feel this, I thought we were going back to medieval times or something. I wasn't quite sure with that. Yeah. So, now, what happens to... You don't know either? It's just odd, isn't it? Now, what happens to the people that received the letter? They basically gave them choices, but was there a deadline tied to a risk that said, by such and such a day you have to do any of these, or and then you have to show?
It was actually
that part of it?
It was actually interesting like that because they didn't do anything like that, and they didn't make any threats in the letter. The Connecticut State Police have been known in the past. We've caught them issuing very threatening letters with arrest, all that stuff in the past for things that aren't even illegal. And, looking at the language of those letters and looking at this one, there's nothing in this one that really indicates that you will be arrested. It simply states that you are in violation of the law if you don't do this. So, again, it was probably one of the most moderate things I've seen the state police do. And, I hate to use the term, but you could almost applaud them for doing that because it was the most right thing they could possibly reply with. Just advising people that, you're now in violation of the law. Here's how to rectify it. We'll look the other way. I've never seen the state police do that, honestly.
Yeah. It's different, yeah. So how many gun owners would you say that you have in Connecticut, Rich? Do you have a number or not? Any idea?
Well, we have various statistics. On our site, we host a whole bunch of databases, things like the weapons registry. We host the state conviction history database. We do a lot of things. I can give you some quick numbers of hunting permits in Connecticut. Last time we checked, which was actually probably about a year ago, we had about 54,000 active hunting permits. We have 200,000 pistol permits, which are to carry or possess a handgun, open or concealed, by the way. We also have the population of Connecticut is around 3.5 million, and the last check I saw, there were about 1,050,000 registered firearms in Connecticut, which obviously the registered firearms in Connecticut don't include a lot of different types of firearms. So those are basically the numbers we have, but it's impossible to get a number on how many actual firearms owners there are.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case no matter where you are. I know, in New York State, many of us have multiple gun owners, but it's not like the multiple guns that are on your pistol permit, because we may have some long guns or something, and, you don't put that on there. So I think that's a very difficult thing to gauge unless, somebody listed every single gun they had in their home.
Right. And as the government ramps up with this kind of tyrannical approach of trying to know what everybody's firearms are, they're going to find it more and more difficult to find out that. I think there was quite a bit of complacency and apathy in Connecticut for a long time, where people were like, well, it's a big deal. They've always been nice to us. We can carry openly concealed. We can do this. We can do that. For a long time, our firearms laws stayed the way they were, and they were halfway decent. I mean, we certainly had our share of issues. For instance, we had a assault weapons ban before this as well that was, a lot more moderate. However, a lot of people kind of got complacent about that, and I think after this one, we found that there was a lot more civil disobedience. There was a lot more, I'm never going to tell the government again about what I own.
Right.
I think people really learned their lesson.
Yeah, I'm very curious how this is going to turn out. I mean, our registration is April 15th, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to turn out here in the state of New York. And, I think like Connecticut, the files that they currently keep, the state police keep, the database, as you say, is not accurate. I mean, many of the county clerks where a lot of this information is kept have told me that, they don't, they haven't purged these records in a long time. So someone could have moved, someone could have passed away. A lot of this data is outdated data, and it's difficult to find that out. So I don't know how they could enforce, using that data, because it's basically corrupt data, So it'll be interesting to see what happens here in the state of New York.
Right. And I wish everybody in New York luck. I mean, certainly we're watching you guys are watching us, and hopefully New York and Connecticut will always have each other's back.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about that. I know there are a number of us that are coming to the rally on the 5th of April, just to do what we can as a sign of support, for you guys in Connecticut, and also, just as fellow gun owners and fellow believers of our constitutional rights, which is basically what we're fighting for here. I think that the minute when, they started talking about gun control on any level in any state, everybody gets their hackles up, and we're kind of nervous that, you don't really know what's happening, because on the national level, they look like they're headed toward, gun control all across the U.S. too, and everybody wants to protect that right. So I don't think you have to worry about that. It's almost like we're, like New York and Connecticut now have become almost the mad scientist experiment or something.
Yes, it sure feels like that sometimes. I guess that infection somehow spread all the way from California, but
yeah. Isn't that true? Must have been a jet stream or something, you know. I'm not quite sure, Rich. I don't know what caused that, but it was one of those things that scared me. Yeah, oh boy, that's it. Okay, so you say that the state has until May 7th to repeal this legislation. And that's the end of your legislative session for this year? Is that why that's the date?
That is correct. You know, we certainly hope they'll take up the issue because at this point the legislature should have full warning that this law is completely ineffective, it's impotent, it means nothing, and they should be ashamed of themselves. They passed a law that was purely for political gain of do something now, and with no thought of the ramifications of this. Now we have, you know, possibly tens or hundreds of thousands of people who are suddenly felons, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. How are you fighting this with your legislature? What are you doing to get them to repeal it? Yes.
Well, we will certainly be pursuing it during this legislative session with letters and things like that. However, we don't really have any faith in our legislature. I mean, they passed it with emergency certification, much like they did in New York. And there's no recall process here in Connecticut. There's really, I mean, maybe one or two legislators that I can really think of that would even be close to being on our side. And I don't think they would play political suicide like that. The legislative options are pretty much exhausted for right now. At least until our next election, which is really going to be an issue, you know, a deciding issue there. But really, in general, Connecticut Carry's strategy is, again, you know, a heavy focus on education and a focus on the individual legal defense of people who are caught up in this law and other laws.
So you have a legal defense set up for them to help people?
We are actually in the process of setting up an important legal defense fund, one that's much more robust. In the past, we've just kind of given ad hoc to who we feel is necessary and done what we can, but we're going to try to arrange more organized systems from here on. That's one of the emphases of this year.
Yeah, I think that's important. I know that, you know, Scope is doing that here in New York State and the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. So, you know, we have two strong agencies, you know, that are doing that are also fighting, which is, you know, a good thing. You know, that the groups are working together. We have a number of grassroots efforts also, you know, that are working to try and get this repealed. And as you say, it's difficult with the legislature. You know, we have some that are pro 100% gun control, and then we actually have the people that are smart on the other side that are saying, you know, this is ridiculous, and we already had legislation that controlled, you know, what was going on, many of the aspects that are in this bill, so they don't have to do anything. Now, does your legislature, is it in November of this year, Rich, or do you have to wait till next year?
I believe we actually have to wait till next year. I could be wrong on that. It's been a little while since I looked at the campaign stuff, and my head's still swimming from this media campaign. But that's going to be a whole new focus as soon as the legislature adjourns.
Yeah, that's true. Well, good luck. Well, listen, good luck to you, Rich, and thank you for joining me. We'll send people to your page at ctcarry.com. And they can get a little more information, and they can also help you, which would be a good thing to do at this point.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. My pleasure. All right. That was Rich Burgess. He is the president of Connecticut Carry. So you can get his information at ctcarry.com if you want to know a little bit more about them. Go to their site, and that's the best way to do that. And you can read about, you know, what they're doing and what's really going on. Their press release that we spoke about is actually on that site. So you can get their press release and actually get the truth about what's happened there.